Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another deck profile. This time it's going to be another casual deck and it's going to be a Dungeon World Cobalt deck. So one of my friends really likes cobalts, dogs, and just animals in general. So when he saw that there was a new cobalt and it was a Corgi Cobalt, he just had to have a deck centered around the card. So I built a cobalt deck as a result. As the buddy, we're going to be running Corgi Cobalt. This card's pretty good because of some of the other cards in the deck, but what this card does is, as a call cost, you pay 1 life, and then when this card enters the field from your hand, you can call one size 1 adventure with 4,000 power from your deck by paying its call cost. But what's more important is at the end of battle that the adventure or dungeon enemy with this card in its soul has attacked, you destroy 1 card on your opponent's field. Most of the time, we're going to try to get this card to go into the soul of our big boss monster, so that way we can use its ability to start popping stuff. We're going to run 2 of the old vanilla cobalts, so we run 2 of the size 0. We run 4 Guru Bunbuku. So what this card does is you choose a monster on your field, discard this card from your hand, pay 1 gauge, and that chosen card gets plus 3,000 power, plus 3,000 defense, plus 1 crit, move, and penetrate. So it just is a really good card at mass buffing your big boss monster. Next, we run 4 Yellowbat. This is just a good Dungeon World draw card, so you just call it, you discard a card from your hand, then you charge 1 and draw 1. You only draw 1 if you have another dungeon enemy, but because we're running cobalts most of the time, you're going to have another dungeon enemy. Next we run 4 Vampire Shura. We just use as a mill card just to get cobalts into our drop zone from our deck. When he enters the field, each player puts the top 3 cards of their deck into the drop zone, and then you get a charge 1. Next, we run 4 of the Buddy. Again, it's a Cobalt, and we mostly care about having it into the drop zone so we could use its ability from the soul by putting it from the drop into the soul. Outside of that, it's just a really good card to just tutor out in Adventurer. We run 2 White Silver Great Warrior. So this card we just mostly use to gain gauge, because there's a combo that I found in the deck that just eats up a lot of gauge, so we use it mostly to gain the gauge. Its secondary effect, where if a dungeon enemy on your field attacks alone, it attacks all monsters, isn't really going to happen a whole lot because we don't have a way to reduce its size, and a lot of our size 2s we don't really want to play. But most of the time you're just going to use it to gain some gauge. Next, we run 2 of one of the other vanillas. So we just run it because it says Cobalt in its name. We run 2 Doberman Cobalts. Again, a vanilla Cobalt that we just run because it has Cobalt in its name. Next, we run 3 copies of Tosa Hound Cobalt. So its call cost is paying 2 gauge and put a Cobalt from your drop zone into its soul. So that's generally how we get Corgi Cobalt into the soul, is by calling the boss monsters. It's just okay. This one has Penetrate and Soul Guard. It's just simple because it's old, but he's not the main boss of the deck. Next, we run 4 copies of Hellhound Lord, Cobalt Lord. This is the big boss monster of the deck. Its call cost is put 3 cards with Cobalt in their name into its soul from your drop, and pay 3 gauge. The idea behind it is you want to have Corgis in your drop and you want to have Tosa in your drop. When you call him, you put 1 Tosa, 1 Corgi, and the other could be just any other Cobalt. And then you use his act ability, which is calling a Cobalt monster from its soul by paying its call cost, and it becomes a size 0. So you can now call Tosa from his soul, and Tosa will become a size 0. And then if you have another Corgi in your drop, you just put the other Corgi into Tosa's soul. So each one has a Corgi, and they can each utilize Corgi's ability. He's just a really good card for the deck. The last monster we run in the deck is 2 copies of Second Manifestation Demonknight. Because Hellhound is a Demon Lord, we play the Demonknight to kind of extend our plays, and he's just a good impact monster. As far as the spells, we run 2 reset button. Sometimes you just can't get all of the cards that start gaining you gauge like crazy, so reset button is a good card to just help fix your gauge. We run 3 copies of Friends Connect. So this is just a really good draw spell. It's pay 1 gauge, draw 2, then if you have an adventure and dungeon enemy on your field, you draw an extra card. So it's basically pay 1 gauge, draw 3, which is really good. Next, we run 2 copies of Bunny Call. Pay 1 gauge and basically choose a card on the field if it were to be destroyed, or return to hand, it stays on the field. It just helps protect our cards that we want to stay on the field, like Hellhound or Tosa or our item. Next, we run 3 copies of Gummy Slime Shield. It's one of the newer defense spells and it's really good for the deck. Its call cost is put a monster from your drop zone to the bottom of the deck. Most of the time you're not going to want to put a Corgi or Cobalt to the bottom of your deck, so it'll just be literally any other monster. And then it nullifies the attack if you have an adventure on your field. Doesn't have to be monster, but if you have an adventure on your field, you put the top card of your deck into your gauge and gain 1 life. And if you have a dungeon enemy on your field, which most of the time you're going to have a dungeon enemy on the field, you get to draw a card and the card can't be nullified. So it's just a really solid defense spell. Next, we run 3 Razed Castletown. So we just use this to rest a monster on the opponent's field. So again, it's just another good defense spell. As far as the items, we run 2 different items in quantities of 2. The first one is going to be Magical Beast Tamer Flute Good Boy. You pay 1 gauge, you equip it, and then it has a counter ability where you can pay a gauge, rest this card, and then if you do, you can stand a dungeon enemy on your field. So you can basically get another attack with any of your Cobalts. So like Tosa or Demon Lord. Then the other item, which we run 2 of, is Staff of Polarization. This is a pretty good item. It's one of the newer Dungeon World items. You equip it by paying a gauge and putting the top card of your deck into its soul. If you have an adventure on your field, this card and all monsters can't be destroyed by my opponent's card effects, and they get plus 6,000 power. If a dungeon enemy monster is on my field, this card and all monsters can't be returned to hand by the opponent's card effects, and they gain 6,000 defense. So most of the time, it's just going to be a defense boost, but the few times that you can get the adventurer out and it stays out and you don't have the size 3 Cobalts out, it just makes those other adventurers and the rest of your stuff more powerful. And then the other reason why we run it is because it counts as an adventurer card. That's it for the main deck. Dungeon World has a lot of other flexible cards to run. I just have a giant list of other cards that my friend was like playing around with. He was playing around with the Assassin Godspeed. So this is just another adventurer. He couldn't manage to get it into the soul of his dungeon enemy to get its effect off, but the first part of its effect, which is tutoring out an item, is pretty good. Then he also ran Magical Beast Tamer Kazane. This was just a flavor card. Most of the time, if he didn't have Tetsu or Hellhound out, he would just try to do like a size 1 formation, and then Kazane was just the meat and potatoes of it where it could just get an extra attack. Then we thought about playing Subaru. We only really thought about playing Subaru because its size gets reduced when you have an item equipped, and getting your item isn't necessarily the hardest thing depending on some of the other cards that you can run. And then on top of the fact that its size can get reduced so it can fit into your board of size 3s, it also can have an extra crit and take away a crit, which is pretty good. We thought about playing with some Demon Lord support, so you could possibly run Magical Eyes Release. This just charges 2 and steals a gauge from the opponent. You could run Demon Lord's Armor, which for Hellhound you just put it into its soul and then it gives it the ability to not have its abilities get nullified by the opponent's cards. And then all of the opponent's cards on their field will get minus 2,000 power, minus 2,000 defense, and minus 1 crit. We thought about running Thunderblade Joker to increase our center monster's crit by 1. We thought about Staff of Monster Master. for its counter ability that we would run it, where you can rest this card, and if you do, a dungeon enemy in battle gets plus 2,000 power, plus 2,000 defense, and counterattack. So if they're trying to swing in, if you have like a really good setup, you could just basically stonewall the opponent and then give your monster counterattack. As far as like just some other generic cards, you could run Golden Treasurebox. You could also run Dangerous Fuse. If you just want to run a generic draw spell, Time Sale's pretty good. You could possibly run Continue. Continue is kind of interesting because you can call a size 2 adventurer and a size 2 or less dungeon enemy from your drop by paying their call cost. So if you just want to like fill your field up, it's a pretty good card at filling your field up. As far as some other defense spells, you could run Forced Summoning. You could also run Divine Protection. You could run the Folktale defense spell. Then there's Glorious Defense Wall. You could also run Thundermarked Urn. There's so many other defense spells you could possibly run if you don't feel like running the ones that I have in the deck currently. If you really want to run some more powerful cards in this deck, you could run Overturn Masseria to basically reset your hand. You could run Iris Lilac to do some digging and to drop a soul of a card on the field. You could run Unfreezing, which is just some more digging. Like, these are just good draw spells. You could run Bonus Quest, again, just another good draw spell. You could run Miracle Fighters, which you can use it to tutor out one of your size 3 Cobalts, so it's pretty good there. You could also run Buddy Option, change out your Buddy, and you could give a Buddy Penetrate, or you could put it in the soul of a card on the field and then just have it so that the abilities of that card can't be nullified. And it just adds another soul to it, so it's a little bit more tanky. And then Loyalty, just to shut down the opponent's plays. These are all really good options, but I just felt for how casual the deck is, it really just doesn't necessarily need it. It's a meme deck, it's a fun deck. It was definitely a lot of fun to make, and it was definitely a lot of fun to play. The deck can get there. It's just a fun, casual deck to play. I hope you like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.